You don't need to.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay.
Cool.
You can see me though, right?
I can see you. And they can see you.
If you're up there, it's a little easier. I'll actually, well, you know what? I should look at the camera, right?
Yeah, just look at your camera.
Okay.
Okay, you look fabulous.
Oh, thank you. You must look fabulous. I can't see you.
Hi, you guys. I am so excited to be here with one of my favorite people.
Hi, everyone.
Her name's Vanessa Scotto. It's okay that I'm not there.
Canada, you presented she.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, we're just playing. So what's going to happen is this is the first broadcast that we're having where finally all the tech works together. It's so great. So I've got here with me Vanessa Scotto. Hi, Vanessa.
Good morning. I'm so excited.
From Miami. And she is, like I said, one of my favorite people. She's a change catalyst. And this woman has just a really amazing, rich amount of expertise, knowledge, resources in her toolkit. She is someone who I met really serendipitously, and I went to a yoga class that I had been recommended to me with a woman named Lauren Imparato, and I'm going to be interviewing her in the coming weeks. So you guys will meet her. But I went to her yoga class down in Little Italy, came back to my apartment here on Bond Street, and Lauren and Vanessa were sitting out on the patio of the restaurant that is downstairs in my building. And I said, oh my gosh, I just went to your yoga class. We started talking, and then things just continued to happen. Vanessa and I hopped on Skype, and we decided to work together. She is one of my fave clients and also is a wonderful referral source for me, and also I like to send people to her as well. She has a background. She is a traditional Chinese medicine doctor. She has a master's in counseling, and she's a life coach. And mix all that together with her unique blend of sass and really an academic mind, and then just her amazing presence, and you get someone who, gosh, I get chills. I don't even know what to call you other than someone who is a catalyst for change across the board with her clients. And she works with people who are, and I'm just going to call these things out because I think it's interesting, highly sensitive people. If you don't know anything about an HSP, go Google it. You might be one. She works with people who tend to be, again, multi-passionate. That tends to be a theme for the week. Her people are also really amazing, tend to be creative and entrepreneurs, but also very type A. So they really hold themselves, perfectionists, they hold themselves to the highest standards and then can often be their own worst enemies. So those are the amazing people she works with, and she does amazing stuff with them. We're going to talk about that today. So,
thank you so much.
I want to start with you because there's so much goodness. So let's do this. Vanessa, tell me a little bit about your journey, where you started and how you got to where you are.
Wow. Okay. Since that could be a really long topic, I'm actually going to tie it right into the playing big and how to outsmart your inner critic today, and why this topic is so relevant to me personally. So, you know, there's a long, fabulous journey where I always knew I wanted to help people. I went to school for Chinese medicine, and I found that even the physical symptoms were so often coming from either psychological or spiritual blocks. So I went on to study life coaching, and then I went on to study counseling. But let me tell you a little bit about my personal story and why this is so relevant for me. I've always been a fairly happy person, but I struggled with a really intense inner critic. I mean, an intense inner critic where I was always doubting myself, always second guessing myself, falling into deep despair, falling into deep depression, not because anything in particular was wrong with my life, more because of the mental dialogues I was having in my own head. So I got hip to that. I started doing life coaching. I did therapy. And it took me on a journey towards school for counseling psychology. Now, in school for counseling psychology, you do group therapy, which is really, I recommend it to any of you. Group therapy accelerates your transformation process really quick because, you know, you can't see yourself from inside. And a lot of people would say that, I was intimidating. I didn't show my vulnerabilities, and I got really great information. But I also had a lot of painful experiences. And this is where the concept of playing big came from. What I learned was a lot of people very specifically said to me, Vanessa, you're too big. You take up too much space. Uh, I feel insecure around you. And, at first, being a very empathetic person, I would shut down. I would hide. I would apologize. I would cringe. I hated the idea of hurting people. But over time, it became very clear to me that this is a bit of an epidemic culturally, where when people feel insecure or they feel threatened because they haven't learned to stand in their wholeness and their bigness and their expansive selves, they shut you down when you do. And and then of course, go ahead. Yeah, when people haven't learned to stand in their expansive selves, in their wholeness, when they feel uncomfortable being genuine and authentic in their potential, they will shut you down. And that's either consciously or unconsciously.
So, and I don't want to interrupt your flow because that was amazing. But guys, this conversation is super important for, I would suspect, all of you. And again, as entrepreneurs, as people who have these big dreams, you are constantly playing big, but you need to have the internal scaffolding to support the big vision. And that's what Vanessa is talking about. And she's talking about how you can, we're going to talk about how you can mitigate when other people try to keep you from playing big. And the more important thing is not about what other people are up to, but the more important thing is how you can handle when your own inner critic is trying to keep you from playing big, which I think is much more insidious and more challenging to deal with. So, Vanessa, tell us, how does, oh, also I just want to make one side note. Vanessa has a very powerful energy. She's someone who is made for the stage. We've been working together, and I'm really excited to see her to continue to just step into a bigger stage and a bigger spotlight. She's someone who is just really adept with that, and not everybody is. It goes back to what Beth Grant was talking about yesterday about Guru Star or the Wisdom Guide or Supporter Connector type. Frankly, not everybody is meant to be a big personality on stage, but Vanessa is. So she's coming at this with a lot of experiential background to help navigate what she's gone through and also to help navigate what you're going through. So back to Vanessa. Tell us what can we do to handle both the external and the internal forces that want to keep us from being our big, true, amazing selves.
Yeah, and just a note to get back to what you were saying. Playing big to me just means having the courage to be true to your fullest potential. Just having the courage to be your best self. So whether that's big and shiny and loud, or whether you're really like serene and graceful, whatever the flavor, it's about shining. It's about stripping away any of those dull, heavy, limiting belief systems that hide your inner magnificence. And you hit an important topic, Lauren, because of course, none of us wants to be ostracized. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to be criticized. What really happens is that triggers our survival mechanisms. But the bigger problem really doesn't come from outside. If we could develop the ability to soothe ourselves, to interrupt our self critical dialogues in the aftermath of receiving negative feedback from the outside, it wouldn't be such a problem, right? Someone would potentially say, oh, Vanessa, I don't love that book that you wrote. And I might feel stressed, and maybe I'll talk about it with Lauren. And then it would be soothed and it would discharge. And so the fear wouldn't be so intense. But what people are most afraid of is the inner critical dialogue. They're afraid of shredding themselves if they get any negative feedback, or if they fail, or if something goes wrong. So the beginning is to understand that what you're most afraid of is yourself. But the power lies in the fact that you can actually take steps to do this. And Lauren, do you want me to just jump into some of the ways that I look at that?
Some tangible things, and I definitely want to continue talking. Sorry, I definitely want to continue talking more about your theory and your methodology, because I think that's also really important for people to understand. But yeah, so tell us, what do we do when the inner critic feels so overwhelming that we don't know what to do about it?
The first thing I think is you want to look at mindset. So let me say this right off the bat. We all have an inner critic. It is present. It's present in your neural wiring. It's actually a survival mechanism. When they look at the brain and they observe somebody who's in the middle of a critical dialogue, they see that it's linked up to the survival regions of the brain. So really, you can look at inner criticism as a form of anxiety. It's a fear that you'll be kicked out, that you'll be rejected, and that's why it becomes a survival mechanism. Okay, so once you understand that, you you know, a lot of times people will get self-critical, and then they'll get self-critical that they're self-critical, right? So we just kind of add insult to injury. So if you notice that you're having a hard time dealing with this inner critic, don't judge yourself for that. Welcome to the tribe. I mean, I was self-critical just preparing for this. I'm probably going to be self-critical afterwards. You know, Lauren wrote a beautiful blog post on her own issues around that. So don't judge yourself for having this inner criticism. It's very natural. And in fact, as you're expanding in whatever ways you need to unfold, the inner critic can get louder and louder because it's trying to keep you safe, and it's always scared of the new and the unknowns. That makes sense so far, right? Okay. So what you have to understand is if the inner critic is triggered by a neural survival mechanism, you can't just intercede by trying to speak to yourself differently. And this is where most of us
into. Repeat that.
If your inner critic, which it is linked to a neural survival mechanism so that it's now become body-based, you can't just intercede by trying to change the conversation. And this is a huge mistake that all of us make because we haven't learned a different way to do it. So the common thing that most of my clients will do, and that I've done in my life, is you start to have this inner critical dialogue. Maybe let's say I unconsciously, it begins. I have this dialogue, oh, Vanessa, you know, you look terrible today. You're going to look horrible on camera, for example. If I was to try to speak to myself, the normal things that may come back are, oh, what's the big deal? Oh, you're so vain. And what I've really done in that moment is I've begun to criticize myself for my fear. Now, this just adds more intensity to that anxiety that triggered the survival mechanism to begin with. Even if, let's say, I tried to be kind to myself, oh, Vanessa, you look pretty. It really won't work. And here's why. Your thoughts, your cognitions tend to follow the state of your body. So if your body is in a hyper-aroused, anxiety-laden, fear-based state, you can't just speak to yourself differently and expect a result. So think about it this way. Think about a time in your life when you've been really hopped up, really anxious, really afraid, and you're really charged. And somebody says, like, it's okay, don't worry, it'll all work out. It doesn't really tend to work. It doesn't land. In fact, sometimes it can almost make you feel even a little bit worse if there's not a process in between. So here's the process in between. Before you shift your self-talk, you have to calm down your physiology.
So tell us, when you say that, and I think that's really important, you guys, this is tweetable too. Before you shift your self-talk, you have to calm down your physiology. And we all, you know, I'm sure we're students of Louise Hay and positive affirmations, but how many of us have done positive affirmations only to feel that they're futile and they're not really getting us anywhere? And now we know why, because there's actually a physiological reason. We have to change something about the way our body is being before we change the words that we're telling ourselves. And, you know, that goes back to the short 10-minute breathing meditation that Tracy and I got to do yesterday. We felt so different after that. And then the rest of the afternoon was super fun time. So, Vanessa, tell us a little bit about ways that you recommend to shift physiology quickly.
Sure. Okay. So the meditation always works. I mean, across the board, meditation works. You guys got one yesterday. There's a lot of different kinds of meditation out there, but so many people get intimidated by meditation that I want to give you a few simpler, more straightforward, and even more direct ways to begin to calm the body and then hopefully generate feelings of compassion towards yourself, which really, really is the antidote to your inner critic, is cultivating self-compassion. Okay. So the first thing to understand about that is self-compassion. It's not just a thought, it's not just a belief, and it's certainly not self-pity. Because some of you type A people out there, you think self-compassion, you think, oh my God, I'm going to start pitying myself and I need my inner critic to succeed and to motivate me, which is not true. Research shows that it's actually standing in your way more than it's benefiting you. Self-compassion isn't pitying yourself. It's literally a feeling, which is visceral, of warmth and care. That's what compassion means. It's a feeling of warmth and care. So we're aiming to generate a different, warmer, calmer, more caring experience in our body. Okay. So there are some easy ways. I'm going to say those right off the bat. Think about it from a physiological standpoint. When you're in survival mode, your sympathetic nervous system is turned on. You're in what they call fight or flight or freeze mode. Okay, so that's survival. The antidote is you want to get your parasympathetic turned on, which is your relaxation, calm, chill mode. Okay, the way to do this, there's a few angles. One, touch your lips. I know it's really simple and it's really easy. It's one of the reasons why kissing calms us down. But if you don't have someone to grab and kiss at the moment, you can actually touch your lips by yourself. And I found one day I correlated that I was doing it on my own. If I was nervous, I would just kind of rub my lips a little bit. And there's parasympathetic nerve fibers in there, and it'll start to calm your body down. So that's super simple, super easy. Nobody knows what you're doing. The next thing, you want to double your exhale. And you all can do this even in the middle of having a conversation with someone. You could do it on the subway, or you can take a time out and really kind of get meditative about it. But on your inhale, let's say your natural inhale, you count to 3. Your exhale, you want to double that and go to 6. And whatever your natural inhale is, you just double the length. What that does is it tells the body there's nothing to be afraid of. We're good, right? Because if you were in a crisis, you would keep inhaling to pump oxygen through your system. Once you tell your body, hey, there's nothing to be afraid of, we're all good, your thoughts follow the change in your body.
Interesting. My grandmother has always told me if I can't fall asleep, then I need to breathe in for 4 and out for 8. So that's really interesting. I don't think she's ever studied, physiology and its effects on your thoughts or sleep, but she knew that that would help me, and she's told me that since I was a little kid. So I was able to self-soothe as a little kid and put myself to bed because I would just breathe how she told me to breathe and do the counting, and then I'd be asleep and I'd forget that I was counting. So those are fabulous, fabulous tips. Now, do you think that specifically the lip one, do you think that that's one of the reasons that people like putting on chapstick so much?
You know what? It really can be, because when you're nervous, you'll find that you're doing this more. You can see people. Yeah. And the same thing could be said, like if you put your hand over your heart and then you take a breath right into this heart center, you can actually begin to secrete oxytocin, which is a calming, love-oriented neurochemical. When you secrete that, now you get yourself primed to be more open, more warm, and more caring towards yourself. Then you can start to shift the self-dialogue and learn how to actually motivate yourself from a balanced, neutral, caring position.
I love this. I'm going to sit like this for a little while.
No, isn't it amazing?
It is
I mean,
amazing.
I tend to do this thing where I almost like a baby, like tap myself, and it's so simple, and you may even feel silly, but the truth is that we're wired to appreciate something like this, and we get a very quick neurophysiological feedback loop. But beyond that, like most of us just never learned how to soothe ourselves properly. We just didn't learn how to move through fear, how to calm ourselves when we're all worked up, and how to release anxiety. And if you learn these things, especially how to move through fear and self-criticism, honestly, as nothing but fear and action, then you can take risks and you all can go for what you want on these big, beautiful endeavors that you're dreaming up.
So you brought up something, and I want to get into it a little bit. You have been incredibly creative in the past, let's say 6 months, and a lot of us out here are also creative, but occasionally feel creative blocks. Can you talk a little bit about what goes on inside when you're being creatively blocked, and then how can we get past that?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, there's a few things that can cause a creative block in my experience. Certainly fear. I mean, the number one thing for all of us is fear. When I speak to people, most people know, I'm sure all of you know, that they're standing in their own way. It's very clear. Now, why do we stand in our own way? In part, it's fear, right? We're afraid of success, we're afraid of shining, we're afraid of the responsibility, we're afraid of crashing and burning. All of these different ways of fear. Think about the energy of fear. Think about when you're afraid, you kind of contract in, you shrink. And that's the same thing that can happen energetically, and it can block your flow of creativity. Okay, that's part. Now let's go one step further with that. When we're analyzing, because when you're afraid, you begin to analyze your scenario. How do I maintain safety? How do I protect myself? When that's happening, this is a left brain dialogue, okay? Analyzation comes from your left brain. Now, this is extremely important. Analysis is good, but your left brain can only predict future possibilities based on what it has witnessed in the past. So, when you how can I be safe? How can I make sure no one makes fun of me? And you're scanning, you're also only predicting future based on past. Now, none of this is really that creative, awesome zone with which, like, we can seduce our muse and really come alive and tap into that unconscious, subconscious, wonderful body of work that lives within you. So, the antidote, again, is to calm fear and to access our right brain. Now, our right brain is where we feel connected to the whole. It's where divine inspiration, so to speak, comes from. It's where we just flow. We don't have to think about it, we just are. So, to access your right brain, you can do meditations. Guided imagery is especially useful for your right brain. Um, Unconscious, like you sit and you're in the shower, that's when a lot of people get great creative thoughts, and that's why you should have like a notepad or a recorder near you. Anything that accesses your right brain, which comes through images, cutting out, vision boarding, will help you later create. So even, let's say I'm a writer, but if you do a vision board, it'll just activate your right brain, so then when I sit down to write, I'll be more in my flow. Does that make sense?
It's interesting you say that. I suspect that most of the people on this broadcast want to also write books, and I know that you've already got a book that's almost ready to go, and then there's going to be a whole lot more coming after that. But when we talk about the process of creativity for writers, it is very, it's got to be right brain, but what Vanessa's talking about is accessing the right brain in a way that is a little counterintuitive. And there are writers, the one I'm thinking of specifically is Frances Mays, who wrote Under the Tuscan Sun and continues to write memoirs and cookbooks and travel memoirs. I love her. I am obsessed with her. I would like to have dinner with her in Italy. But Frances, she actually lives not far from my hometown in North Carolina now, which I think is very cool. So Frances has a process where she gathers materials for a book project in the form of clippings and cutouts and collages and this and that in a box. She actually has a box for each project. So in this era of, and I love Evernote and I love my iPad and I love all that stuff, this woman is taking paper and putting it together and like creating the story visually in front of her from a variety of artifacts, really. And that is what Vanessa's talking about, getting this juice flowing. That's what she's talking about, accessing your right brain. And, you know, that's a reason that there's a woman, I remember, I haven't seen her in a long time, but Brenda Norman, she's a copywriting teacher. She teaches you to dance and, like, get kind of sexy in your dance moves before you write copy, because that gets you in your right brain as opposed to your left brain. So I love that.
Remembered, and I have to add something. This was a key, like as I was speaking, I forgot. You know, I speak about seducing your muse because we want to be creative and we think it's just supposed to bubble up out of us. We're not attending to our soul. We're not attending to our inspiration. We're not feeding ourselves. And one of the things that can happen, and I've worked with clients on specifically creative block before, and I've seen this to be true, is not only can we just be too analytical, either in our day jobs or because we're being perfectionistic, but we can get into a state of inertia. So if, let's say, you're not feeding your soul, if you get into really unhealthy habits where you're not moving your body, you're not feeding yourself well, you're not taking the time to inspire yourself daily. You know, we imagine like inspiration is just supposed to strike us. I don't think that's correct. I think we need to seek out moments and opportunities with which we will feel inspired. So you have to really get yourself moving, body level, you know, walking, exercising, swimming, breathing, eating well. On a psychological level, you know, tapping into your unconscious, using imagery, touching things, using fabric. And then also on a spiritual level, feed yourself things that inspire you. You know, at moments like this, listening to conversations like this, or getting an audio download from your favorite author. Like I used to get so inspired by Joseph Campbell. He was one of the people that sparked that inner fire. You can't just expect creativity to come out of a place where your body is lethargic, your cognitions are dry, self-critical, fear-based, and your life feels dull. Do you know what I mean?
That you made those points, because we were talking about flow of money yesterday earlier, and flow of creativity is just the same. Like the flow is happening, but if you're not open to the flow, then you're not going to feel creativity. And the other thing too, I think a good book for you guys to read would be Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. Mm-hmm. It talks about seducing the muse that Vanessa is speaking so eloquently about how you create a structure that helps you seduce the muse, that helps you be wild and crazy in your art, so that, you know, when the time comes, it distills and it shows up for you because you're showing up for it. There's something else there that I want to speak to around the creativity piece. I can't remember at the moment, but there's just there are a lot of layers and nuance here, you guys. It's so much fun to go back in and to dig into this. It was Jennifer Urizio who's coming in to the studio later today. She was telling me, she's like, Lauren, stop reading nonfiction. And what she meant was stop reading self-help and stop reading business books. And I thought that was so funny. She's like, just read fiction. Just read fiction or like memoirs or something, biographies, whatever. But stop reading this stuff, because she wanted me to get more, you know, self-help and business tend to be fairly analytical type books, even the self-help variety. And her point was, I want you to have like a creative font, and you need to have that like flow of creativity coming from a different place and in a different way. And she was suggesting fiction and other people's lives as a story. And I heeded that advice, and I've been reading amazing creative stuff, fiction and historical fiction in my, free time. And this has been one of the most prolifically creative I would say 8 weeks I've had in a long time. So that's, maybe not a coincidence.
Well, I love that, because here's the thing I think of is we all want to set ourselves up for success instead of setting ourselves up for failure. And if you want to set yourself up for success, think about the conditions that will promote success, either the internal conditions, so some of what we're talking about around mindset and activities, or the external conditions, like what you listen to, what you look at, who you surround yourself by, how you spend your time. And so I think, whether you want to learn to be more self compassionate, more self loving, at which case you shouldn't set yourself up for failure by overloading your plate with way too many things so that you couldn't possibly succeed. You should be around people who really inflame your inner critic because that's their habit. You know, if you want to promote the conditions of amazing creativity, you have to feed that. You have to take time out for yourself. You have to go for walks in a museum, whatever inspires you. And that's what this is really about, is you tapping into your genuine self. What would feed your soul? I mean, Lauren, don't you think this is also relevant for social media, like how people are going about promoting their businesses? That's either going to inspire your creativity, inspire your authenticity, or people will feel like they get exhausted and they're playing a role, and it kind of diminishes what we turn out.
Vanessa was just talking about is this whole concept of creativity is absolutely applicable to your marketing plan. So for instance, I'm going to go grab my little colored sheets. What we were talking about yesterday with the CX narrative arc, I'll show you this one. Yay! And the CX narrative arc also, I applied that same, Vanessa, I'm just going to fill you in really quick. We were talking about how the arc of a novel or a play with the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, last minute reversal, and then resolution, how that applies to our customer experience. So, and then also, guys, you can apply that same model. Here's the other sheet. You can apply that same model to your content marketing. So you want to have that narrative arc. And the reason that I keep pulling these out is because, number one, I think they're brilliant. And number two, not to toot my own horn too much, but number two, what Vanessa's talking about is this creativity piece, is that the social media and authenticity has been a big touch point here in the past 2 days. But the concept that you get to create something with your social media, with your email newsletter, with your blog posts, you're creating something that didn't exist before, and it gets to come from somewhere true and authentic and real inside of you if you let it. You don't have to follow the formulas. You don't have to go, yes, familiarize yourself with Copy Blogger, because their posts about the, how to write good subject lines and blog post titles, that stuff is good to have in the back of your mind and to let it be a foundation. But what Vanessa is saying is let the creative part come out so that you're creating something that is generative and not consumptive. I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean? You're creating something that is going to inspire other people's creativity, as opposed to putting out a tweet that really is just taking someone's time and not really giving them anything back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, think about it this way. There's nothing that exhausts me more than feeling like I have to do something that I don't feel is true to me or that I don't feel capable of. And so, I know social media is not my favorite tool. I love Facebook, actually. I really get into it. I couldn't get into other tools like Twitter. So when I would try to tweet things, it would be really forced. And then I would feel on an implicit level, this isn't rational. Remember, most of this isn't rational. Your self-criticism is not rational. It's implicit, it's learned stories, it's body-based fears. So on that level, I would feel like I'm trying to fit in. Now, as soon as you feel like you're trying to fit in, the assumption is you don't already fit in. And then you start to feel stress and you start to feel intimidated, and it really blocks flow. So at the end of the day, if you're not inspired by what you're doing, how is someone else going to be inspired by what you're putting out there? So you have to keep coming back. I mean, in my experience, I could go and I could compare myself to a lot of people on social media and how they're doing it. And then I have to remind myself just to come back to that vortex, to that place of flow where I'm connected to myself and I'm connected to my message. And then from there, put something out. And if I'm not connecting with anything, put nothing out. But I think that, I have a lot of clients who struggle because they're highly sensitive people, or they're creative types, or they're healers, and they don't always connect with the business marketing model. And especially for you guys, if you don't find a place where you can flow from your authenticity and feel like who you are can be appreciated in the space, you'll start to exhaust yourself and you'll wear thin, and you find that it won't really catch on.
Oh, that's so smart. And again, you guys, I swear I don't prep these people. They just are all picking up on the zeitgeist and these themes, and we're rolling them around in the atmosphere, and we're getting to add layers to them. And the blog posts that I've posted that have been most successful, or by the numbers, that have gotten the most hits or the most shares or what have you, have been the blog posts that I just from my heart had to put out. It wasn't, oh, I should just do this because it's Monday and it's time for a blog post. It's like, I can't function unless I write this right now. And those are the ones that have been, for me, they've been the most cathartic. And then also for the people who follow me, they've been the ones that generate the most response. So again, what Vanessa is saying is go back. You have a lot of wisdom that you can tap into. Sometimes we just get caught up in like the Twitterverse, and we forget that we really do have the capacity to create something that is true to us, that will resonate with other people, and that will give us the results we desire too, if we let it. And that it's not necessarily by following the formula that you see out in the world. And again, we are going to talk about that more in the next hour with Peggy, about marketing based on your palm, which will be really, really fun. So Vanessa, we're going to big. Are there any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
Oh gosh, I already have so many final thoughts now. I do want to say, self-compassion is a huge thing. The concept of learning to be very kind and caring to yourself promotes resiliency, and it allows you to keep taking risks, which all of you need to be taking risks to get to your next level. To be your best self, you have to be taking risks. So if you can learn to be kinder to yourself in the process, because you're going to fail, you're going to mess up, you're going to have people not like what you do, that's really how you keep supporting yourself in being able to grow, because you have to stretch in order to get to your next level. And I think I want to add one more thing, because whenever I talk about how to deal with the inner critic, I do get a lot of type A light like me, perfectionist people saying, I need it to motivate myself. What will happen? Will I get apathetic? Will I drop the ball on myself? And here's what I want to say to that. You won't. However, this is not being overly kind. This is not about just saying it's okay to stay in your comfort zone. You don't have to try. You also have to build a sense of self-responsibility. And when you can develop self-compassion, you can also allow yourself to give honest feedback. So let's say, for example, I set up with Lauren, my success strategist, that I'm going to do this blog because it feels right to me, and I'm going to do it every Monday because that's what I need to do to honor my business. And then let's say the next week I don't do it. And then the next week I don't do it. This is not about just saying to yourself, oh, it's okay. Because what happens is you break self-trust. When you break self-trust, you lose faith in yourself. And then every time you say, I want to try something, you'll get a fear-based, anxiety-laden response with good reason. Think about if someone broke your trust 5 times in a row. You would have a hard time believing them the next time they promised you something. So it isn't about dropping the ball on accountability, but it's about being able to say to myself, you know, Vanessa, hey, you said you were going to follow through with this. Come on, what do we need to do here to get it moving? What's the holdup? Why are you holding back? Are you afraid? And having a genuine conversation, but still holding my feet to the fire so that I can actually create what I want. Because otherwise, if we just focus on kindness, we can really enable ourselves to stay in our comfort zones. Does that make sense?
Beautiful. I think that was a perfect place to close, because this isn't about self-flagellation and like, get your shit together. Well, and it's not about, oh God, you know, I need to have self-compassion. I'm gonna let myself off the hook just this one time, because both of those are detrimental to your playing big.
Yeah.
Equally detrimental. So if you really want to play big, then start to incorporate some of these techniques that Vanessa is talking about, with physiology being the first, the primary thing that you need to relax, and then getting into the mindset pieces. But really, really interesting stuff here, Vanessa. And I love how you weave in the brain science, the neuroscience into this, into the psychology of it. It's just really, really fascinating. So thank you so much. I know that you've got a busy.
And for all you out there who want to expand, I mean, this is my heart and soul. It breaks my heart when someone else shuts a human being down because they're insecure, and it breaks my heart when all of you shut yourselves down. We only have one life. I always say life's short, play big. I'm offering 50% off to anybody who wants to get a first life coaching session with me, because I'm really, really honored and grateful to be here, you know, with all of you. Please stay in touch. And with you, Lauren, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Welcome. And guys, again, I will have in your resources you'll get at the end of the day / possibly tomorrow morning. You'll get resources that will let you access all of the tools and the downloads and the deals that are going on from our speakers, because that's a really generous offer, and I would highly recommend it. I get to see behind the scenes of Vanessa's thinking. It is an amazing place. So get in on that. All right, Mama.
Thanks, everybody. You too. Bye, Lauren. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Guys, we're going to come back at the top of the hour with Peggy Arvidsson. We're going to talk about the heartline centered marketing, and I will see you soon. Thank you. Peace.